The movie opens with an anonymous narration introducing April, a young photographer, as she captures photos of various passers-by in New York. April is an ordinary single woman who often spends her time in cafes, observing the people around her. She quietly watches as they either work on their laptops or gossip with their friends. She lives in a small New York apartment with walls covered in empty picture frames, a quirky choice she adopted from her favorite TV show. Now, however, April views the empty frames as symbols of her lost dreams. She envisions them filled with memories of the beautiful family she has always wanted. In her mind, the walls are filled with photos of her success, her children, and a husband she has yet to meet. Moving forward, April finds it difficult to stay committed for a long time and breaks up with her partners for the smallest of reasons. April's biggest fear happens to be living a meaningless and purposeless life with no direction or motive. Because of this, she constantly seeks ways to feel relevant and important to those around her. One day, while riding the subway, engrossed in her own world, April sees a mysterious person drop their journal in front of her. Now curious, she picks it up and tries to give it back. Much to her dismay, the person had already vanished. With no other way to give it back, April keeps the journal to herself and, out of boredom, proceeds to read it. She opens the journal and sees a poem written on the very first page. She starts reading the poem and is instantly captivated by the writer's thoughts. She then imagines the mysterious person reciting the poem to her and feels inexplicably drawn to them. Later that day, she returns to her apartment and continues reading the journal. It contains no name, address, or contact information to help her locate its owner. Despite this, April becomes determined to return it, all the while fantasizing about what the writer might be like. As April continues reading the journal, she comes across several locations that the author, who April assumes is a handsome young man, had been to, and the first names of all the people he knew and loved. Eventually, April finishes reading about 15 pages of the journal. As she continues, she feels incredibly guilty for invading the mystery man's privacy. She realizes that her own loneliness has driven her to read someone else's intimate thoughts. After a while of contemplating what she's doing, April decides to stop reading the journal. However, just before she closes the journal, the final line on the 15th page catches her eye. There, the writer confesses to feeling relief and freedom after his sister's passing. However, he then exclaims that he feels incredibly guilty about it and hasn't been able to forgive himself for it. It turns out that the writer's sister was chronically disabled. Caring for her was immensely difficult and draining, so when she passed away, he felt really free and liberated. When April reads all this, she is left stunned. Eventually, April falls asleep and dreams of the day she'll return the journal to its rightful owner. She imagines knocking on a strange door and a handsome man opening it. In her mind, he smiles and thanks her, and she finds herself falling more in love with this person she's never met. The next day, April goes back to work, but soon becomes bored. She sneaks out of her office and roams the streets of New York. As she walks, she glances at the men around her, wondering if her mystery man might be one of them. She begins to envision the hidden personalities and thoughts these men might have kept from the world. As she continues to think, she starts to wonder about the true personalities of her exes. Sadly, she realizes that she dumped them before they could reveal their true selves. This thought fills her with guilt, so she tries her hardest to distract herself. A couple of hours later, April attends an art class. She looks at the model in front of her and starts to sketch him, but imagines him as her mystery man, adding her own flair and ideas of what he might look like. Just then, her friend Laura asks if she's had any luck finding the journal's author. April replies that she hasn't, but she's determined to keep searching. Laura then asks if she can read the journal since April keeps describing the writer as perfect. April instantly refuses, saying his thoughts are personal and shouldn't be shared. After much insistence, April reluctantly reads a single passage from the journal to Laura. April reads it with emotions and interest, which leaves Laura all the more confused. After finishing the passage, April asks Laura what she thinks. In response, Laura just shrugs and says that he's probably gay. Annoyed, April retorts that the mystery man talks about women frequently in his journal. Laura admits that it's probably because he wants to be like one. This infuriates April, so she starts defending him with all her might. Laura just looks at her weirdly and wonders if she has some sort of trauma causing her to act this way. Concerned, Laura asks why April is so infatuated with a stranger, but broke up with her seemingly perfect exes over the smallest of pet peeves. April explains that she feels like she and the mystery man are a perfect match because they think alike. Eventually, Laura asks what April will do if the mystery man turns out to be a weird, fat, balding guy. April just shrugs and says she'll deal with it when the time comes. With no other option, Laura decides to help April find the journal's author, hoping to snap her out of her fantasy. She asks what April knows about him. April mentions that he lives in a predominantly Hispanic area and visits a park with a large pool every day. From this, Laura guesses that he might live in Astoria. Excited, she and April decide to put up flyers around Astoria, hoping the mystery man will come forward. That night, April receives a message on Craigslist about her ad for the journal. The sender, claiming to be the mystery man, reveals that the journal belongs to him and asks whether she has read it. April panics upon reading the message, thinking he'll hate her if he realizes that she's read his personal thoughts. The next day, April asks Laura to come over and tells her about the message on Craigslist. She reveals that when she sent the sender an incomplete poem from the journal and asked him to fill in the rest, he got the lines right. Laura, excited, suggests they meet with him as soon as possible to put an end to all the speculation. However, April just shrugs. It's clear she wanted more time to fantasize about her mystery man. Now that they're actually going to meet, her excitement is starting to fade. Instead of imagining him as perfect, she will soon have to face him in real life and acknowledge him for who he truly is. She shares her thoughts with Laura, who just calls her crazy, and warns that she'll end up alone with a lot of cats if she continues down this path. April, however, ignores her and keeps thinking about the mystery man. Soon after, April heads to a nearby diner, where she's supposed to meet the journal's owner. Sitting at a table, she watches the door, eagerly waiting for him to arrive. Eventually, a man named Bill approaches her and introduces himself. Clearly, Bill is nothing like she had imagined, so she tries her best to contain her disappointment. Bill quickly takes a seat across from her and starts flirting, but April has already lost interest. She hands him the journal and immediately apologizes for reading it, admitting it was invasive and rude. She asks for his forgiveness, explaining that she was only trying to find clues to return it, but got caught up because it was so interesting. April praises Bill's writing, saying she related to it the entire time. After her explanation, she waits for Bill to respond. Instead, he just grabs her hand and flirts even more. Disgusted, April pulls her hand away and attempts to change the subject. She tells him he shouldn't feel guilty for something beyond his control, and offers advice based on what she read in the journal. But Bill seems confused and has no idea what she's talking about. Suddenly he mocks her, suggesting that this probably isn't her first rodeo. Feeling uncomfortable, April tries to leave, but Bill grabs her hand again, asking her not to go. To her surprise, Bill turns out to be a creep who thought the ad was part of a role-playing kink. Realizing this, April stands up to leave. Before walking out, she asks how he knew the last line of the incomplete poem she sent him. Bill then reveals that the poem is actually from a famous song. He also points out that she mistakenly posted the ad in Craigslist's role-playing section, instead of Lost and Found. As expected, April is shocked by this and runs out of the place with the journal as fast as possible. Later that day, April feels so overwhelmed by her encounter with Bill that she asks for a day off from work. She then prints multiple flyers to post around Astoria, since she still hasn't found her mystery man. She puts the flyers all over Astoria and other parts of New York, hoping to find him. She even places a flyer inside a bottle and drops it in a lake, because the writer had mentioned wanting to find his true purpose in life through a message in a bottle in one of his journal entries. While April is putting up more flyers, an old man notices her and asks about the journal. He then starts talking about a friend of his who recently passed away. April offers her condolences, and noticing how frail he looks, offers to walk him home. The man eventually asks April to help him place a rock, dedicated to his late friend, near the shore of the lake as a tribute. He tells April about the other rocks he has placed there after attending the funerals of loved ones. April listens, unsure how to respond. She then asks the old man if she can take pictures of the rocks dedicated to his late friends and family. The man agrees, watching as she takes close-up photos of the rocks. Afterward, he quietly walks away. April initially worries that she may have offended him, causing him to leave without saying anything. She wonders about his life and what it must be like for him now that everyone he once knew has passed away. She wonders about the man for quite a while and watches him walk out of the park. Eventually, April takes the subway and proceeds to head back home. She thinks of how her life is going to be when she turns old. April is in her own train of thought when sees a very familiar figure walk by. She looks at the person intently and realizes that it's her mystery man. April immediately follows him, but loses sight of him halfway through. She anxiously looks around, hoping to find him again, and that's when she sees him standing right before her. April feels incredibly nervous as she approaches him and tries to calm herself. Just then, the mystery man turns around and asks if she's okay. As she had imagined, the man was handsome and well-spoken. She hurriedly pulls out the journal and asks if it belongs to him. The man replies that it doesn't. Now confused, April explains that the journal fell out of his bag. The man then tells her he bought the bag at a sale, and many people carry the same one. Hearing this, April is deeply disappointed. She apologizes and starts to walk away, but the man stops her and tries to strike up a conversation. He then asks if she'd like to grab a snack with him. Taken aback by the question, April makes an excuse and tries to leave. The man, however, persists and introduces himself as Jared. April quickly introduces herself as well and runs away as fast as she can. Jared, undeterred, asks if they can meet again sometime. Unfortunately, he receives no response and walks away, clearly dejected. Meanwhile, April rushes back to the subway, her heart racing. She suddenly remembers the rock the old man had placed near the shore, with her name on it, and feels an overwhelming sense of anxiety. She wonders if the rock was meant for her. After a few moments, she manages to calm herself down. Determined, April exits the subway and begins searching for Jared. Luckily, she finds him sitting alone at a cafe. She quickly approaches him and apologizes for running out on him earlier. Jared forgives her instantly and invites her to join him. Soon, they start talking and quickly hit it off, feeling an instant connection with one another. Later, April meets with Laura and tells her all about Jared. She explains that she feels a strong connection to him, and even though she doesn't know much about him yet, she feels like they could be together. Hearing this, Laura breathes a sigh of relief, celebrating the fact that April is no longer fixated on the mysterious, imaginary man. April laughs at her reaction and continues talking about Jared. They then discuss love and marriage for a while before parting ways. That night, April finds herself thinking about the journal's author again. She wonders if her interest in him has grown. After much pondering, April decides to fuse Jared with the author in her mind. She tries to find common traits between them so that she can fall for Jared even more. The next day, April goes to Jared's place to hang out. Jared plays his favorite love song for her, excited for her to hear it. However, as the music plays, April starts imagining Jared with his exes and even envisions him being intimate with multiple women at once. When the song ends, Jared eagerly asks if she likes it. Still shaken by her unsettling thoughts, April awkwardly shrugs, unable to fully clear her mind. Moments later, the two talk about their favorite things, hobbies, and interests. April soon realizes they have nothing in common and, in fact, don't even think the same way. They attempt to discuss various topics, but their perspectives turn out to be completely opposite each time. Eventually, they talk about their requirements in love and why their previous relationships didn't last. At one point, they begin discussing their favorite movies and slowly but surely start to get along. They then listen to a French song and try to guess its meaning. When it's April's turn, she closes her eyes and begins imagining a scenario. In it, a young girl walks past a man playing a violin beautifully and smiles at him. She then lies down on the green grass, thinking of the happiest moments of her life. Just as April is describing the scene, Jared leans in to kiss her. Shocked, April immediately pushes him away. She awkwardly tries to leave, but Jared stops her just in time and asks her to stay a little longer. April hesitantly agrees, and the two run around the apartment, taking pictures of each other with her camera. Soon enough, they get closer and kiss passionately. They end up spending the night together, making love. Later, April sits in a cafe, looking through the pictures and videos she took at Jared's apartment. As she scrolls, she reminisces about the moments they shared. Months pass, and April and Jared go on several dates, having a lot of fun together. They hang out at his apartment from time to time and run errands together. They even sneak into shady alleys to make out, further igniting their passion for each other. They go on picnic dates and spend nearly every moment together. With each passing day, their relationship grows stronger and happier. One day, however, April has a strange dream. In it, she finds herself unclothed, standing on a stage with Bill across from her. Beside her stands the mystery man, who finally introduces himself as Maximilian. April and Maximilian appear to be contestants on a game show, with Bill as the host. The game quickly takes a grim turn when Bill announces that if they don't win, one of them will be executed. Soon Maximilian's journal is presented before April, and she is asked to guess its price. When she fails to do so, he is taken away and executed. Thankfully, April wakes up at that moment and sees Jared lying beside her. Relieved, she goes back to sleep. The next morning, April wakes up to find Jared reading the mystery man's journal. With an amused expression, he tells her the guy is probably manic. Annoyed, April snatches the journal away. Jared then asks if she has found the man yet, but she responds that she hasn't. At that moment, Jared exclaims that he may have met the mystery man. He mentions that the guy likely lives in Astoria and frequents a bar called Kelly's. April is elated by this clue and rushes out of the apartment, ignoring Jared completely. Needless to say, Jared is incredibly hurt by this behavior, but decides to remain quiet. Moments later, they meet again to grab some breakfast. Jared tries to talk to April, but she keeps thinking about the mystery man. When he offers her some of his food, she snaps at him, saying she doesn't want to try it. Frustrated by April's behavior, Jared starts ignoring her as well. Both Jared and April refuse to speak to one another, acting as if they don't know each other. Silently, they head over to Kelly's pub to find the journal's author. They talk to the bartender for a while, even inquiring about the mystery man. Eventually, they decide to hang a flyer, hoping the author might see it. Just as they're about to leave, the bartender informs them that the person they're looking for doesn't come to the pub often anymore, but he always shows up on Friday nights. He suggests that Jared and April return then. The two agree, thank him, and walk out. Later that day, April and Laura decide to hang out. They go to a nearby movie theater and spend some time together. After the movie, Laura asks April how things are going between her and Jared. April replies that they're still getting to know each other, so nothing is certain. Laura notices April zoning out several times and finally sighs, asking if she's still obsessed with the journal's author. She remarks that despite having a loving boyfriend, April is still pining over some imaginary guy, which she finds very strange. April quickly counters that she just finds the whole situation exciting, but Laura doesn't buy it. Frustrated, she tells April to stop searching for more in every guy and urges her to give Jared an honest chance to see where things go. After a couple of hours, April goes back to Kelly's and asks the bartender Lindsay about the journal's author. Lindsay tells her that the man, named Dave, is a jerk and a compulsive liar who makes up stories to gain sympathy. April's heart sinks upon hearing this, but she remains determined. She asks Lindsay for Dave's address and heads there immediately. However, as soon as she steps out of the pub, she runs into Jared. Confused, she asks him what he's doing there. That's when a deeply hurt Jared reminds her that she missed their date. They had planned to attend a gala together, but April became so wrapped up in Dave's journal that she completely forgot about it. April tries to apologize, but Jared cuts her off, telling her to save her breath. He then asks if she has finally found her mystery man, to which she replies that she's about to. Jared simply shakes his head, expressing his disappointment. He tells her that her obsession with the journal is unhealthy. He also confesses that he's madly in love with her, but it's clear she doesn't feel the same way. Heartbroken, Jared decides to walk away from her life. Now desperate, April pleads for another chance. At that moment, Jared then takes out a lighter and asks her to burn the journal to prove her love for him. As expected, April immediately declines, so Jared, now immensely disappointed, wishes her well and leaves. Dejected, April watches as Jared drives away, regretting the mistakes she made. She feels guilty for leading him on and believes her obsession with the journal has caused her to lose everyone she loves. Despite her guilt, April continues to imagine Dave and follows his silhouette for a long time. Eventually, she arrives at his house and knocks loudly on the door. A disheveled young man answers and quickly invites her in, asking how she knows Dave. April explains that she found his journal and came to return it. That's when the man reveals that Dave has passed away. April is shocked to hear this, so she asks what happened. The guy tells her that he ended his own. In shock, April places the journal on a nearby desk and tries to leave. Just then, the man hands her Dave's mother's address and asks her to give the journal to her. April agrees and rushes out, still panicking. She makes her way to Dave's mother's house. Once there, she pulls out a piece of paper and begins writing a note. Suddenly, Dave's mother, Donna, appears and asks about her visit. April explains that she found Dave's journal and came to return it. Touched, Donna invites her inside and shows her photos of Dave. April quickly offers her condolences and tells Donna that Dave is an incredible writer. She also goes on to add that if he were alive, they would definitely have been good friends. At one point, April asks if Donna knows why Dave took his life. Donna breaks down, explaining through sobs that her son took everything seriously and never truly liked himself. She recalls how Dave was full of life as a child, but over time, his light dimmed until he eventually ended his own life. Moved by Donna's story, April wipes away her own tears and listens quietly. After some time, April prepares to leave. Just then, Father Randy, the priest who gave the sermon at Dave's funeral, comes by. He sits down on the sofa opposite April and talks to her about Dave. After a while of conversing, April bids him goodbye. As she's about to go, Donna hands her a plate of cookies, thanking her for returning such an important part of Dave's life. Filled with warmth and guilt, April thanks her and walks away. As she leaves, she sees Dave's silhouette vanish, symbolizing that her search for him has finally ended. Once April reaches home, she finally lets her emotions out. She is not only confused but angry that she never had the chance to meet him. She thinks that if she had found him sooner, maybe he would still be alive. With that, she lies on her sofa all day and night, blaming herself for being so obsessed with the journal in the first place. After days of wallowing, April wakes up to a sharp knock on her door. She opens it to find Father Randy standing in front of her. Confused, she invites him in and asks why he's there. Father Randy tells her that he wants to talk about the journal. He asks how she went about searching for Dave, and April ends up telling him the whole story. She talks about the ad on Craigslist, Kelly's pub, and even her argument with Jared. Hearing all this, Father Randy sighs deeply and asks how she feels now. April admits that she feels guilty about Dave's demise. She explains that she wanted to tell him how much she could relate to him and assure him that he wasn't alone. Sadly, by the time she reached him, he was already gone. After a moment of silence, Father Randy tells April that no matter how hard she tried, she wouldn't have been able to save Dave, as he was a very troubled man. Then, in a shocking turn of events, he reveals that the journal actually belonged to him. With a solemn expression, Father Randy tells her that he was the one who used to write in the journal. As expected, April's jaw drops to the floor, and she doesn't know how to react. Father Randy goes on to explain that he gave the journal to Dave in an attempt to save him. He wanted Dave to know that, just like him, Father Randy had also felt lost, isolated and scared, but had managed to make it through. In a way, both Father Randy and April wanted to save Dave by letting him know he wasn't alone, and that there were people who would accept him and his trauma. So, after Dave took his own life, Father Randy also felt an overwhelming amount of guilt. Eventually, April speaks up and asserts that the journal validated her feelings and made her feel less alone, which is why she wanted to meet Dave so badly. After helping each other sort through their feelings and assuring one another that they weren't responsible for Dave's passing, April and Father Randy bid each other goodbye and parted ways. Days later, April meets with Laura and reflects on the choices she's made. She realizes that she was so afraid of the outcomes of her decisions that she forgot to enjoy the experiences as a whole. April thinks back to all the people she met and loved. She reminisces about the fun moments she had and decides to cherish them for the rest of her life. Eventually, April thanks Laura for supporting her throughout the ordeal and tells her she's been trying to contact Jared. Sadly, he has been ignoring her completely. Just as she's lamenting the loss of the perfect guy, April gets a brilliant idea. She rushes to Jared's place and anxiously knocks on his door. When he finally opens it, she confesses that she truly loves him and doesn't want to lose him. She explains that she was scared of how quickly things were moving, so she pushed him away. After listening to her for a while, Jared forgives April, and they kiss passionately, confessing their love for each other in between kisses. The movie finally ends with Jared seductively pulling April inside his apartment, ready to start over, hoping to spend the rest of their lives together.